So what I would like is to take you through a journey with me. Can you look outside? Or maybe you have a picture, a hand, or even close your eyes for a moment. Just think of the outside. Can you spot any edges? So just looking at the garden here, there's just so much going on, and particularly at the edges. Just for example, looking at the tree, at a single tree, a single boundary of a tree. Communication between birds, even between different species, opportunistic plants quickly covering the ground, others sort of merging towards the sun. And that got me thinking, what's with all these boundaries? My work and research is focused in organizations. And edges are the outside limit of an object, an area, or a surface. And within the organizational sort of context, we don't have real boundaries. We have artificial ones, a cognitive creation of us humans to help us to make sense of the diverse reality we live in. And one of the repercussions of those defined cognitive boundaries, such as where a team starts and it ends, is this sort of intriguing notion that we have a separation between the parties, the elements. And generally, in organizational design, we focus on the team or team's structure, on the elements, the components that forms a whole. It's an imagined order to help us comprehend and coordinate in big numbers. What if we focus on the edges, connections, and what comprise those spaces? And how can those be sustainable, be resilient, regenerative? The truth is that we have this sort of relentless obsession with order, tidy gardens, tidy organizations, and how we commonly imagine that order is highly defined by sort of artificial roles, structures. And if we look at nature, forest edges are not tidy, don't have clear straight lines. And when we obsess with the elements and sort of clear-cut definitions, we are setting progress back. And then nature is right back at work, sort of feeling the disruptions that we just made in our gardens and in our reorganizations with pioneering plants. So let's not get political here. Needless to say that when we omit the natural order in our imagined order, generates detrimental disruption. And artificial structures commonly look at splitting, competing for resources, gaining terrain, gaining influence. Very linear, compartmentalized structures, such as the square fields imposed in our landscapes by the petrochemical agriculture, don't encourage exchange and flow. And sort of becomes at times like the story of the goose and the golden egg. And our invented boundaries, such as role hierarchies, team structure, our organizational chart, which in my opinion are outdated archaic legacy tools from the 1800s, and we haven't evolved. Those are sort of sharp or abrupt. And the bigger the organization is, or the more mature, the imagined separation between the different elements is wider, the definition of the modules is tighter, and the belief of being a truly separate entities is higher. And so our straight lines, our boundaries of imagined order are, like, for example, hierarchies, either amplify or suppress information. And what definitely does is filters and silos. What is interesting is that 3.8 billion years of strategy refinement has a very different take. And that take generates abundance. Many scholars, or Peter Drucker as well, was talking already of organizations as biological networks. And we think synapses are sort of the empty spaces between neurons. Music is also the spaces between the notes. Look at this contrast. At the top, where we have boxes, straight lines, arrows. Bottom left, we have a sort of a close-up of a red sponge coral fossil featuring this sort of texture, irregular perimeter that is blending with its surroundings. There are no sharp straight lines. Or the bottom right, which is sort of a representations of atoms bonding, separating, sort of showcasing the dynamic connections and these connections. And at the bottom, at the center, what we have is an artificial border. It's between Belgium and France, a field right there in the middle. Artificial boundaries like countries and geography. You can see at the back end, there is a nap just crossing across an imagined boundary. So is it really the deer crossing the road or the road crossing the forest? So thanks to Learn Biomimicry, I did go on this quest looking for organisms, ecosystems, and sort of trying to break free beyond the elements per se through my own process. And doing that in a multiple different ways. And asking, how does nature edge? Looking at mitochondria, riverbanks, many other things. But also, how does nature tango from mycorrhizal to laurisilva? How does nature bond from gliolipids to coral? How does nature intersect from synapses to wetlands? How does nature converge from lichens to estuaries? And through this process, sort of 4 themes, patterns kind of emerge. Let's stop. Even if we look 1 dimension, 2 dimensions, 3 dimensions, 4 dimensions through time as well, is this idea of the increase of perimeter. So even if the surface area is the same, having more perimeter, even the volume is the same. When you have sort of greater perimeter, what it does is increases opportunities for things, such as collecting resources with our organizational hat on, not humans, right? But resources of documents, devices, finance, things like that. Creating opportunities of spaces for the members' interactions. We were just looking outside, what's happening at those edges. Think of diversity of microclimates, microenvironments, exchange of ideas, knowledge, energies, abundance. It also increases the density of the activities on a smaller area. So if we put our biomimicry hat on, this could be a principle to base our design, our organizational design of having this gradual shape, maximizing form, which is going to allow regulation of focus, energy, materials. So it can be attuned. The pattern that the only constant is change, right? We are in flux. Higher exchange cycle of nutrients diversity. Creating a process which is energizing and generates beneficial intersections. The function at heart of having a permeable layer, a structure that is going to adapt to changing conditions. And imagine this idea of inertia for the ability of the elements within, again, member space, finance, to allocate where it best fits and evolve as when is needed. The only constant is change. Being resilient to fluctuations, flow management, this idea and ability to form and reorganize connections, especially in response to learning, experience, or stress following an injury, reorganization, resulting in a principle of having an irregular branched structure of channels, connections, having more relationship at the edges, and with nested loops that's going to help us to handle when there is over or underload. And as a permaculture practitioner, when doing regenerative land design, especially with water, you need to think, what happens if there is not enough? What happens if there is a lot? And so similarly, how do you handle those nested loops to handle over and underload? And then how we further edge increase? How does nature expand? Flowing interest by design, imagine. So this idea of gradual build-up, maximizing those edges, that is going to allow the system for self-distribution of the elements where they are needed and wanted, not forcing anything or anybody anywhere, which can increase and distribute resilience over time. And as part of the creation process in my latest book, I propose some potential uses of these concepts, but I'm not gonna go into details now. And also context is everything. To give you a flavor here. So perimeter increase, influx, flow management, expand, where the form becomes the purpose. What could erosion, fast flow be versus deposition, slower, even sedimentation be? Bring those more connections and exchange at the edges. So this is it. Somebody wanted to see it again. This is the compilation and the sort of hands-on journey, because yes, we roll up our sleeves in the book. Also, not sure if some of you have seen, I noticed when I published this picture, is that it's full of edges. I see the contrast of straight lines, neatness versus the messy, flourishing, productive, high exchange edges, just right here. And I know at times it can feel that they require evolution, that we, one species, have to come to terms. It's too big, it's too hard, it's too complex. And on those moments, I remind myself that tipping points are not linear and that we are not alone. And with that thought, I'll take the opportunity to introduce you some of the minds and the stories in the book. So meet Esmeralda. From a hiking experience to research on ecological succession to set up a cyclical network of businesses. Meet Lucy, inspired by the concept of biodiversity spots, evolved her own practice at Workwell Solutions. Meet Michelle, with PhD in public health, reframing conflict as a movement through creative tension, and also founding the social soil. Meet Rosanna, applying biomimicry in biomimicry teachings, developed the tool called BCCSI, so that's biomimicry concepts for cooperative school improvement. And then meet Brittany, who is the talent illustrator of the many conceptual images in the book. She also works at the edges, including urban design, spatial planning, placemaking in the landscape. And it's good to be reminded, as Rosanna rightly puts it, that there are so many smart people at work already thinking about how to be better. We'll get there if we remember that change happens when the conditions are right. And if anything, what I would love is to leave you with this thought. This is home. We must deeply understand this. All our conceptual inventions that don't support this home to thrive as a whole are flawed. There are no boundaries. We all breathe the same air. This is our home, which is not ours alone.